The Sony Xperia Pro-E makes sense. It's a phone made by a camera maker for photography enthusiasts. Unlike the original Sony Xperia Pro, its appeal isn't limited to professionals, who need an external monitor though it can act as one. Instead, this is a camera phone that outperforms the Google Pixel 6 Pro and iPhone 13 Pro when it comes to taking natural-looking, detailed photos and videos with impressive dynamic range, stabilization, and scope to edit. It's missing out on wireless charging and a periscope zoom, so there's room for improvement from the off, but even so, it's a leap in the right direction for Sony. While the original Sony Xperia Pro was a very expensive external monitor with an adequate camera setup, the Pro-E is a top-spec photography phone through and through, confirming it as the best Sony phone to date. It has 3 cameras, a 16mm ultra-wide angle, a 24mm wide which is backed up by that huge sensor, and a 50mm portrait lens. All its cameras have 12MP resolution sensors. At $1,799/$1,599, while it isn't quite as expensive as the $2,499/$2,299 Xperia Pro, it's still a pricey phone. Given the fact it's missing out on the periscope lens on the Xperia 1 and wireless charging, has Sony crippled its latest smartphone out of the gate, or can its main camera make it compelling for photographers? Clearly a Sony phone, the Xperia Pro-E showcases the same long design, flattish sides, and flat front and back we've come to expect from the Xperia 1 family. It also brings back the headphone jack just like the Xperia 1 and sports a USB port at the bottom. The frame is flat, but textured, with a deep striation that wraps around the whole phone, giving the phone a ribbed effect. Set within the matte, blasted aluminum frame of the Xperia Pro-E, it is very easy to keep a hold of it. There's a grippiness achieved without a rubberized finish, which would compromise the finish. With IP68 dust and water resistance and a Gorilla Glass Victure front, and Gorilla Glass 6 back, it's hardy, and despite its behemoth of a camera sensor, it isn't too thick. 8.9mm thick, slightly thicker than the iPhone 13 Pro. As for the camera portion of the phone, its main camera is center-aligned in the top quarter of the phone, and vertically bookended by the telephoto and ultra-wide cameras. It also sports Zeiss branding, and there's a time-of-flight TOF camera in the mix too. While the Xperia Pro's chassis was plastic, the Xperia Pro-E is glass and metal, so feels much richer. It's also more compact, and its camera button is nothing short of a shutter release revelation. On the right side of the phone is a dedicated old-school 2-stage shutter release key. When we read it would be on the phone, we weren't too surprised. Sony is the only brand that's clung onto a dedicated shutter release on its flagships, but the one on the Xperia Pro-E is better. For starters, the shutter release is big and textured, so is very easy to fumble over and control. Being 2-stage, it's also intuitive for photographers, and a long press of it opens up the camera app. If you want to fire up the video app, there's a handy shortcut button alongside the shutter key that does the job. As for the display, it's a 10-bit OLED with a 120Hz refresh rate, with HDR and BT.2020 color space support. Its 4K resolution gives it a competition-beating pixel density of 643 pixels per inch, which is overkill, but the screen runs at a virtual resolution of 1096 x 2560 most of the time. As for the size, its screen is 6.5 inches, and with a 21:9 aspect ratio, the Pro-E is long and narrow, which makes the whole phone easy to clasp. Compared to the Google Pixel 6 and Pixel 6 Pro, it feels classic and clean, and the fact it doesn't have any notches or punch-hole cameras is also refreshing. Instead, the bezels above and below the display are a bit way tighter to accommodate that 8MP front camera. The main camera on the Xperia Pro-E features a headline-grabbing, massive 1-inch sensor, or does it? Before we talk about the Xperia Pro-E more, let's stroll down memory lane and look at large smartphone sensors of old. The Nokia PureView 808 is the first camera that springs to mind. This features a 41.3 megapixel 1.2 in CMOS FC image sensor, and launched in 2012. Complete with a xenon flash, the 808 PureView was a true pioneer of a smartphone, but its antiquated operating system, Symbian, ensured it would never beat out the Android and iOS competition that was to follow. As for its photos, they were untouchable until computational photography took photo processing to new heights, and eked out more natural-looking HDR shots and long-exposure night modes. What would the PureView's 2012 sensor look like with 2021 photo processing? Fast forward to 2021 and hardware-wise, the Xiaomi Mi 11 Ultra shares some similarities. While it ups the resolution to 50MP, it features the same 1.2 sensor size. While Xiaomi's camera phone isn't perfect, its bin pixels deliver a combined pixel size of 2.8 micrometer, and the resulting depth of field it can capture is incredible. Short review about Sony Xperia Pro. Subscribe to our channel for more tech reviews.